So in this video, let's look into the feeds files pack. So what does the feeds file pack give us? It allows us to basically inspect a directory of files on our web server and then display that data within any layout we can imagine. Now, here in the demo, I have a couple really simple examples of a fully interactive file browser. So here I'm listing out a list of files and folders on my server. And if I were to click on the files, they actually download directly to my machine. And if I click on any of the folders, it's fully interactive. So here I click on that. Here's another folder. I can click on that. And here are the files within those. Now, once I'm inside of a folder, I can click the back button and go backwards. And then once I'm at the top level, I no longer have a back button. Okay. So really cool. This gives us a very interactive way to display and interact with files. As you see, I'm also displaying data about the files. So the file size, the date, the last modification date of the files. Now let's look at another layout. Here's something different. Again, another spin of a file browser. But here I have a grid. And if it's an image, I display it as an image. If it's a folder, I display this SVG. And if I click on it, it goes into that folder. And as you see, as I keep going through here, it goes all the way down. And if I click on any of these images, it actually downloads the image directly to my machine. Now, these layouts, again, are built with stacks. The files pack doesn't actually give us any of this. This is all built with our own tools that we already have. It just gives us access to the data. So in that case, we could build out, let's say, a gallery. Let's say I listed out all the images. And when I clicked on one of these images, it opened a light box that displayed a full image, right? It's really up to you to build out these layouts. This demo here just gives us some inspiration on what we could do. For example, if I go into PDF embed, while this actually is a PDF, this is my PDF embed stack with the actual PDF embedded inside of it, right? So this gives us really interactive, way of displaying file data. So let's jump into WrapWeaver and see how these are implemented. So here is the files demo page that's inside the feeds demo project. And if we see here, this is the actual file browser demo. And it's just a 4-column. So I have this static 4-column here. And then I have a divider. And then here's my feeds stack. And in feeds, I go ahead and I added a files feed from my feed. And in here, it's super simple. You just simply put in depot, or, here I have /depot, which is the path to the folder in which I want to display the files and folders. Now, here in the ignore rules, you can actually supply a comma delimited list of file names or folder names of strings that you want to ignore. So let's say we want to ignore anything that has the word sale in it, or anything that has the word, private, I don't know, anything, right? And if any of these words are contained within that file name or folder name, they will be ignored. Now, if you only want to display files and no folders at all, just simply click ignore folders and all folders will be ignored. So with that said, let's go ahead and dump. Really, the feeds file pack gives us data to process within our feeds, and we can create any sort of layout we want. Now, I am going to assume some knowledge of how feeds works, so I am going to glaze over some of this, but let's go ahead and turn on data preview, and let's look at the type of data available. Now, when we are in preview, there's a standard data set that is displayed. Obviously, because feeds doesn't have access to the files on your server, it just kind of gives you some dummy data to play with. So here we go. I have just some dummy data that we can see here, and we can see all the type of data that we have available to us for each file and folder. So we have the name, which is the full file name. We have the base name, which is the name without an extension. We have the full path to the file. We have the path link, which is different but depending on whether or not it's a folder or a file. If it's a file, it's going to be actually the same exact path as the path. But if we see further down, we'll see that folders, it's slightly different. Next, we have what type is it? Is it a file or a folder? We have the size. Now, this is the size of it in bytes. And I'll show you in the layout here how I'm converting that to kilobytes, which is interesting. Then we have the timestamp, and we'll show you how we can modify that to format that a little bit using Twig. And then we have the extension. So if we want to, figure out the extension of the file. So this particular one's a PDF. So here's another file. It's just a JPEG. Now here is a folder. We'll notice here in the folder that the path link is slightly different. And this is kind of the magic that gives us the interactability. So if we have a folder and we click on it, it'll actually tell the files engine to go ahead and drill into that and change the path of our file or the folder that we're displaying. Okay. So Pathlink is an easy way for us to link to folders. And if you notice for folders, extensions are blank because there are no extensions on a folder. Okay, let's dive into the layout now that we've kind of seen the data and what that data looks like. So here we are. As you saw above, I have my 4 column, which has that static header that has all of the columns that we're going to be creating. And in the feeds, essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new 4 column layout for every single file or folder. So here, if you've watched our Twigs video, we have the HTML wrap stack, which is useful. It's in our starter pack. So make sure you get that. And it is a great resource for doing Twig templating, actually. So here I just have an if statement that says if the type is a file, I'm going to go ahead and display this. And if we notice, really the only difference here is the icon. So I'm displaying a file icon versus a folder icon. And those are just SVGs directly in the button label. And then I'm injecting the name. Okay. And the name is the same, variable for both folders and whatnot. Now for the link, you'll notice inside the link for each button, okay, essentially I'm putting the path link macro into the link. Okay. Now, for the files, I'm using the path macro, but since the path macro and the path link macro are the same for the file, I could use the path link variable here as well, and it would be identically the same. Now here I am using the Foundation 6 button, and it has a forced download option. In another layout, I show you how you can get that with the getting started link as well. Okay. And then here in column 2 with the type, I'm just displaying the type. So whether or not it's a file or a folder. And then in the size, we'll notice here that I'm actually doing something different. If it's a file, I want to display the size in kilobytes. Yet if it is a folder, else I'm just going to display 2 dashes. Because folders do have something, they're like 60 bytes, depending on what a folder is or the name of the folder. But the folder itself doesn't necessarily have any size. So I just want to display 2 dashes if it's a folder. And we're going to convert the size here. Remember, this was in bytes. So I actually want to do the size divided by, technically it's 1024. Okay. And then I'm going to round that. This is all using Twig. And then I'm going to put KB at the end. Okay. So this, again, we're taking the size attribute, we're dividing it by 1024, and then I'm rounding it because I don't want decimals. I want to round it to the nearest whole integer, and we're going to display KB at the end of that. Pretty cool. Next up is our next column. Our last column is the date. And I simply am taking the modified field and passing it the date format function using Twig, and that allows us to do date formatting. So as you see here, some really great examples of how to use Twig. If you want more in-depth examples of that, go ahead and check out our video that we already have on Twig templating using feeds. So some really good, powerful stuff there. Now, there is one stack that I haven't talked about yet that comes with the files pack, and that is the folder backlink. So when you notice inside the feeds stack, there is a folder backlink here. And you can add it here, but it's actually intended to be moved outside of the feeds stack, okay, as it says right there in edit mode. So here I have the folder backlink stack, and this is where I want my back button to be. And here you're just going to add whatever button you want. And I just have a little SVG icon with the word back. And if you look here inside the link, this folder backlink stack gives us one macro that we can put in. And it's this. It is the back macro. So we simply put that inside of our link, and that will intelligently do two things for us. It will show or hide the back button based on if we're in a subfolder or not. And then it will actually intelligently create the backlink for us. So it figures out what the backlink is and dynamically puts that in there in the layout for us. So pretty cool. Now, we've already done a pretty extensive look, but I figured I'd look at that second sort of layout that we built. And so here we have the folder backlink with the button, and the link is set to be the back macro. And then here I just have a grid. And inside here, I have feeds. We're giving it the file feed of Depot, the same one. Okay, and you see here I have actually a few ignore rules. So I'm ignoring certain file names here. And then inside here, we have a grid cell, and I have some logic. And as you see here, I did some logic on based on whether or not the file is a PDF. So if it's a file, and if the extension is PDF, then I'm actually displaying my PDF embed stack here. And then I have an else. And then if I'm then assuming it's a picture or an image, and I'm going to display that inside a picture stack. And then below that, I have a link, which links to the path, which has a header with an SVG that has a little download icon. And then if it's not a file, it's a folder. So I have the link here as well. And then I have the SVG of a folder with the name of that folder below it. And this link here, you'll notice that it actually uses the path link variable because that's how we get that interactability when we click on a folder and it drills down and displays the contents of that subfolder. Before we go, I wanted to show you one quick tip. And this has to do with how the demos work on the Weaverspace page. And this is a pretty cool, interesting example here. If you'll notice that when I click on a folder, the page itself doesn't refresh. Now, let's go directly to that particular demo where it's isolated. This demo is only on a particular page. There's nothing else on here. And so we'll notice when I click on a folder here, the page actually refreshes and I can go back. Now, it's really fast because it's just minimal. It's bare bones. But if I drill into any folder, the page actually does refresh. Now, if you have a full-blown web page like this one, having the page refresh could cause some jarring, right? Maybe it takes you to the wrong place in the page if the page refreshes. Although most browsers are pretty good about that. It is nice that it's kind of encapsulated here. And the way I accomplished this was through my offsite stack. So my offsite stack basically here has an iframe that then points to this page. So while the iframe is refreshing when I'm in the actual demo, the page doesn't move because the iframe just simply loads and refreshes actively on the page. So it feels like it's a very fluid experience. So if this is something that you're doing where you're baking in a file browser and maybe a part of a larger web page, iframing it could be a great solution for you. And you can do that using my offsite stack.